The NCAAs are back in OKC. I'm Mike Sherman, sports editor of the Oklahoman, from the Oklahoman studio in downtown Oklahoma City. I'm joined by our college basketball coverage team, or at least a big hunk of it. OU beat writer Ryan Aber, columnist Jenny Carlson, columnist Barry Trammell. We're talking about the return of the NCAA Tournament to Oklahoma City, guys. First time since 2010, and with it comes the Sooners, Ryan. Something we kind of saw coming. We really expected it after that big Donnybrook triple overtime in Lawrence, Kansas, but the Sooners held on and they got here. So my question to you is, you've looked across the field. Other than the Sooners, let's start off with this. Who are you most looking forward to seeing starting Friday in downtown Oklahoma City?
In downtown Oklahoma City, the player I'm most interested in seeing in Oklahoma City is Cameron Ridley from Texas. Ridley didn't play for much of this season. Everybody thought Texas would fall apart without him. They didn't. They gelled together, played much better down the stretch, but Ridley adds so much to them on the inside that if he's able to play and be effective, Texas has a chance to make a deep run in this tournament.
We should mention that you can see him for free on Thursday all day. There's practice. Their practice schedule now on newsok.com. You can check that out. Come over, watch, probably get some autographs, enjoy a nice day in downtown Oklahoma City. You have to pay to see him, however, on Friday. Jenny, who are you excited to see?
Well, I mean, I think I'm excited to see Texas A&M potentially on Friday, but player-wise, I'll follow that lead and say that Northern Iowa's got a guy that hit the game winner to propel them into the NCAA tournament. A guy named Wes Washburn is his name, a guard that hits a little pull-up that bounces off the back iron, goes a mile high in the air, comes down, falls through. They go crazy. He goes nuts. Just really seemed to have a good way about him after the shot, too. So Northern Iowa, the last time they were here, it was the Ali Farouk Manesh shot that knocked Kansas out, the Kansas Killers. So don't sleep on Northern Iowa. They've won some games in Oklahoma City.
Let's not get away from that. You had some practice saying that name, and how'd you get so good at it, Jenny?
Writing a little bit about Ali Farouk Manesh for our Thursday newspaper. Had a chance to track him down. He's now a graduate manager at Nebraska, which is essentially an entry-level position for a guy that wants to make coaching his now career aspiration. He played professionally overseas after his Northern Iowa career, but he hit not only that shot against Kansas, which is part of all the highlight reels and the one shining moments, but he also hit a three against UNLV in the first round. And oh, by the way, the coach was Lon Kruger. So
who didn't pronounce his name when we asked him about it.
Didn't even try. But he remembered. He remembered the shot.
Yes.
But Northern Iowa, Farouk Manesh had a great weekend here 6 years ago. Let's see if they can repeat it.
Welcome back. Too bad Bucknell's not here. By the way, Meet the Madness. Today, Jenny wrote about the faces and interesting people that are in the tournament, people you'll meet. Some people are coming here. Barry, who you fired up to see?
I'm actually fired up to see the second local team, which is, of course, Cal State Bakersfield. Nobody's ever heard of any of their players. You actually know their coach, Rod Barnes, was head coach at Ole Miss and was on Jeff Capel's staff 1 year at OU. But Bakersfield, California is more Oklahoman than any other city in America outside our own state. They talk like us. They think like us. They eat like us. They sing like us.
Uh-oh.
The Hokies went out there.
Are you going to sing?
Only under threat of bayonet. The Hokies went in the migration of the Dust Bowl. They assimilated into Bakersfield, California, and really put their impact, their culture on the cultural impact of Bakersfield. And now it's a virtual Oklahoma town in the Central Valley of California. So it's to me, it's a great story.
That's going to be for 1A, the cover of the Friday Oklahoman. You're writing that. Are you suggesting a little bit of a family reunion Friday afternoon here at the Peak?
Well, I mean, here's the deal. Lots and lots of people in Bakersfield, California are Oklahoma fans, state of Oklahoma fans, OU, OSU. The SID, the publicist for the Cal State Bakersfield basketball team, used to be in radio. He once considered putting Oklahoma football games on his radio station. There were so many OU football fans in town. So it's just, we've read about this Okie migration all our life, but the truth of the matter is it did have a profound impact on the city of Bakersfield, California. In 2014, they staged a long festival of the 75th anniversary of the Grapes of Wrath. These guys, we lived the Dust Bowl on our end. They lived it on their end. We've come out of it. They've sort of been more in tune with it because they kept many of the cultures that came out to California.
And now they're migrating back to us for this game.
And they're coming back to play a basketball game.
Perfect.
We might ask them to stay, but not an extra day. They could just go see the sights. The Sooners, however, do not want them to stay and play any longer than Friday. Guys, one more point about the visitors. It just seems like to me, and I know this is the nature of the tournament, but we're pretty blessed here. When you think back to when Bucknell came and the people that came, Bo Ryan was here.
That's a blessing.
Barry's buddy.
Well, that's a blessing. Well, how about a curse?
But there was a great story. But there was a great story that came with it. Of course, Bucknell was here. Kansas has been here the 2 previous times. Not good for them, but good for us because of what happened. Lon Kruger got to come in and make some friends and end up. Jimmer Fredette, my guy, Jimmer Fredette was here. And young Bill Donovan. The last time the tournament was here, Billy Donovan came into town. Yeah. Is it just me, or do we, here in Oklahoma City, we get blessed with great teams, great storylines, stuff like Bakersfield and Bucknell and UNI.
You go all through this and don't mention Mr. Drew.
Bryce Drew with the shot.
I was going to let you guys say that. I wasn't here then. I was needed elsewhere, but you were there.
I was there. I was actually sitting next to a Valpo grad, working for the Associated Press.
Is your arm the bruise is gone after all the hitting?
Pat was low key, but his face, he was just like this.
So everybody was.
Sort of like Fran Fraschilla's face the other day when
Buddy Hield got up. Me and Fran and everybody else in Sprint Center got up. Pat Casey just.
I think there's 2 things. One is storylines. We're always blessed with abundance of storylines. We got the Texas A&M storyline coming. Great. Maybe the tournament just produces these in abundance, and or pick them off trees. And then there's the quality of the games and the stories and the return to Cinderella City. Yeah. So what's our Cinderella City return this time? Who's going to pull it?
I don't know. I'm pulling so hard for that Texas A&M game on Sunday that I really hope that those 2 teams win, just because I want to see them this close to Texas soil playing, a high-profile sport like men's basketball. But again, I could see Northern Iowa. I think they're good enough. I think they're solid enough. Ben Jacobson, their coach, was their coach in the Ali Farouk Manesh era, so they've got the longevity there. I think VCU is a possible upset candidate with Oregon State in that first round, but I don't see Oklahoma losing, and frankly, I don't see Texas A&M losing.
See, I'm a little bit different. I think Texas A&M could lose because I think Green Bay, the pace that they like to push things is so much different from most any other team in college basketball. I think that can give the Aggies some problems, and we've seen Texas A&M have a tendency to disappear a little bit at times. Green Bay's defense, I think, could give the Aggies some issues and cause maybe a big-time upset.
Aaron Rodgers to Jordy Nelson for 3. Barry, who could return us to Cinderella City? Is there hope?
I think Northern Iowa is the most likely candidate because, like Jackie O said, they've got the pedigree. They took out Wichita State. That's not been a great – Northern Iowa won the Valley by beating Wichita State, the Valley tournament. And early in the year, they beat North Carolina.
Yeah.
So,
and Iowa State.
But in between, they haven't had a great year. They weren't even a contender for an at-large berth without winning the Valley tournament. So, they've not been great, but they've got the pedigree, and they do have the coach, and they've got some experience in big games. So I think it's clearly, I don't think Bakersfield stands much of a chance. I would be hard-pressed to believe Green Bay because they're similar. They weren't, they're sort of an upset winner to get into the tournament. But Northern Iowa could do it with Texas.
We have not yet mentioned VCU, Oregon State, the lower seed VCU, Oregon State. That I don't think anybody would look at that as a Cinderella City qualifier, would they, Ryan?
No, I don't think so at all. I mean, these are 2 teams that were sort of bubble teams that we weren't sure if everybody expected, I think, VCU to get in. Oregon State was sort of a team that people thought might not get in. I think a lot of people think that they're overseeded maybe at 7. So it wouldn't be any kind of upset at all if VCU were able to get by that and beat Oregon State, especially given VCU's experience in this tournament versus Oregon State, who hadn't been there since, I believe, 1990.
Let's talk about the Sooners, the home team that's going to be in town. We read about tickets. Apparently, the demand for tickets has risen. OU did not get a huge allotment.
Even though all of us were screaming from the hills telling people to buy your tickets before the brackets came out on Sunday, still people didn't heed that call.
They waited too long, and now everybody got their portion. The stuff has now gone to brokers. So, is it still going to be a big OU contingent, and is that going to be a huge advantage? Probably needed most of all on Sunday.
Yeah, it'll still be a big-time advantage. I mean, there's still going to be a lot of OU fans there who bought their tickets well before it was announced. There are people who paid attention and realized that the Sooners were going to be here. I think really from about the end of January on, you could write it in ink because of the way the bracket lined out, because of where the other sites were. They were sort of boxed out as far as having another team that got directed here. Eventually, Texas A&M wound up in that other high seed spot. But there'll be plenty of Sooner fans on Sunday that find their way into Chesapeake Energy Arena.
Barry, you wrote about this in Monday's paper. The stars are aligned. The path is laid for the Sooners to make it to Anaheim and maybe even make it to Houston. It looks fairly good for the Sooners there. But is the team ready to do that? The team doesn't really look like it's playing optimal basketball right now, at least not the way the Sooners were playing back in January. What's going on?
Well, I mean, they're not. They peaked, I think, in January. They've had trouble with turnovers on occasion, had trouble with productivity from slumping from certain players, not named Buddy Hield, going hot and cold. But the truth of college basketball is that most teams at that level, they have a lot of peaks and valleys through, especially February. You've seen a lot of elite teams that just haven't always, haven't been on an ascending scale the whole way. So we'll see if the Sooners can get right. We've seen some teams in the past. I've often thought this entire season, I've thought of Eddie Sutton's 1992 Cowboys, who at one point were number 2 in America, never made it to number 1, but they were 19 or 20-0, made it to number 2 in the polls, slumped, ended up going 8-6 in the old Big 8, but still rallied at the end, made the Big 8 tournament final, didn't win it, but got a number 2 seed and played very well in the tournament. So I think there's still plenty of time for this Oklahoma team to play well and get to the Sweet 16 with a reasonable amount of confidence. And like I said, it's the best bracket they could hope for.
Yeah.
If they've got the worst, by the committee's own declaration, the worst number 1 seed is in the West. The worst number 3 seed is in the West. The worst number 5 seed is in the West. So Duke at number 4 is the top-rated number 4 seed. But for the most part, the elite teams in this bracket are inferior to their counterparts on the seed line.
And I believe the worst 7 and 10 seeds as well with Oregon
be,
State
yeah,
and
could be.
VCU, which is who they match up in the second round with.
The rest of the country is getting ready to see potentially more of, what we've seen all season, which is the miraculous Buddy Hield. A fun guy to watch. I've had as much fun watching him play college basketball as anybody I can remember. Probably more fun than watching Blake Griffin. That's saying a lot. I think the variety of shots he's thrown up. Jenny, can Buddy put this team on its back even if it doesn't have enough scoring inside, even if the contributions from other perimeter guys come and go? Can he put this team on its back and take it to the Final Four?
Well, I think that's the question. He's going to need help. I mean, I think he can be great. I mean, we saw him in that Iowa State game, score 39, but then have the struggles against West Virginia. Now, you guys know, there's nobody like West Virginia in this tournament but West Virginia. I mean, there's really not going to be a defensive type of effort like the Sooners saw in that semifinal in Kansas City. So I don't think there's going to be anybody that guards Buddy Hield the way West Virginia does. They'd seen him twice. They'd lost to him twice. They knew what he wanted to do, where he wanted to get, and they were really dogged in how they defended him in that semifinal. So I just don't see anybody else, even though you know how good he is and you see him on film, until you're on the floor with him, I'm not sure that you fully appreciate the effort that you need to put out to really stay with him, to keep him from getting what he wants to get shot-wise. And he's so good in scramble situations. I think that's one of the things that really is amazing when nobody's paying attention to him. He's leaking out to a spot where he wants to be to make shots. So I think that, as Ryan mentioned, that 7-10 matchup that they would play into, as among your weaker 7-10s, I think he's going to get going. And frankly, I think some of these other guys are gonna get themselves going against some of these early seeds. Now, does that parlay into the second weekend? I don't know, but I think they're going to get themselves some momentum built out of Oklahoma City, and then we'll just have to see where it takes them.
And I think it leans on matchups a little bit. You mentioned that you don't really know the effort that you've got to go through to defend Buddy Hield until you see it in person. Well, if they face Texas in the Sweet 16, then it becomes more difficult because the Longhorns have seen it. They know what they've got to do. But Texas A&M, Northern Iowa, those teams don't. So they would be a little bit surprised by what Buddy Hield does. And I think that's so freeing for this team to be in a bracket with they've got a couple Big 12 teams, but no definite, well, you're going to have to go through Kansas to get to the Final Four. They don't have a team like that. So I think this bracket winds up pretty good from them in that regard.
Barry, Ryan wrote about Christian James today. The similarities to Buddy Ryan, more physical than performance, but Christian James showed up in the Big 12 tournament. Is there a player on reserve for the Sooners, somebody that hadn't quite found their stride yet that you think in this tournament could really push them to Houston?
No, if they make it to Houston, it's going to be because Hield and Woodard and Spangler and Cousins are the ones that's pushed them. However, a guy that's been playing more and more and actually had a decent couple of games in limited minutes was McNeese. I thought he played solid. As the backup center coming in for Kadeem Latin. He's a redshirt freshman with a lot of athletic abilities, so I think there'll be some game along the line where he's going to be needed, and he's shown me that he can actually get in there and scrap pretty good.
Let's end it up real quick like this. Your brackets, you're all sitting there. Everybody's filled them out. Mine's only partially filled out, by the way.
You're waiting for the games to be played.
I'm waiting for the bogus first-round games to be concluded so I can figure that out, although I picked them. I picked them both last night. Ryan, a bracket surprise secret from yours, just one.
I like Wisconsin to make a little bit of a run. I think that their matchup with Pittsburgh and Xavier the first couple rounds is very favorable. I think they can make it to the second weekend after the team that we saw here in Norman in November that didn't look anything like an NCAA tournament team. Greg Gard has really turned this program around.
Jenny, who's your bracket surprise?
I don't think North Carolina is a team you want to take very far. I'm not saying they get beat this first weekend because it looks like Southern Cal Providence is who they'd have to beat the second round. So I think they survive the first weekend. But Indiana, Kentucky, likely one of those teams looms. I just don't think I'd take the Tar Heels very far.
Very surprised me.
St. Joseph's to the West Finals.
Whoa!
And they're on the opposite side of the bracket of Oklahoma. They're an 8 seed. I also like Gonzaga to the Sweet 16 as an 11 seed.
Ooh, that means they will have beaten Michigan State?
No. Michigan State's winning the national title.
Okay, I got you. You got them
You
playing
say
that
that
game.
every year.
That's who I got too. By the way, I got Maryland in the Sweet 16. There's my
No
You got
surprise
Maryland
there.
tattooed on your wrist is where you got Maryland.
Hey, that's all for this edition of the NCAAs and OKC. But you can stay with the best coverage team anywhere at News OK and every day in the Oklahoman.